some of you may recall last year I was working on a series, a build-up series for the Revell Rogue One Star Destroyer. I was really excited about that model. I was going to light it. I bought a ton of fiber optics of different sizes for it. I spent hours with a micro drill bit drilling out holes. I got a bunch of flack for one of the videos. It was titled Drilling Out Windows, for not actually showing me drilling out windows and instead just talking about it. But I ended up abandoning that project in no small part because this one exists. A Russian company, of all the companies to get a license for Star Wars, a Russian company called Zvezda, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Zvezda got their hands on the license to do a large-scale Star Destroyer. I believe it's 2700th scale. I can't verify because I don't have the box and I don't have the instructions. I found this thing on eBay, and the best price I could get was a repack. Basically, the seller purchased it wholesale, pulled it out of the box, repacked it, put it in a plastic baggy envelope thing, and then shipped it to me as a way to to save on shipping. And it saved me a bundle. I don't remember precisely how much I paid for it, but I think I probably saved about $20 to $25 in shipping. It took a while to get to me. I think the parts are a little bit the worse for wear for it, but yeah, that 20 bucks made the difference between ordering it and deciding not to at the time. Because while it has been reboxed, it has been imported into the West, and is now being sold by Revell. I've seen that model around in hobby shops, a few for decent prices, but not great. Pretty much everywhere I'm seeing it it's for like 150 to 200 Canadian dollars. So, 120 to 175 US. So it's not cheap. Going the eBay route actually saved me a bundle of money over buying it locally, or even buying it online, the Revell version, because even on like Cult TV Man and Starship Modeler Store, I don't remember what I saw it priced at, but it was still more expensive than I ended up paying for it. So I definitely feel like I made the right call. And saving that money actually enabled me to make an extra purchase. I happened upon a vendor selling 3D printed upgrade parts for it from, I believe it's Falcon 3D Store or 3D Falcon Parts. I can't remember what the name is, but there will be a link down below. They have a couple of different bundles where you can replace just a ton of detail parts for the ship, like the Hangar Bay or parts of the conning tower or the engines, and each kit comes with a little extra. The Hangar Bay kit includes the Tantive 4. It's about yay long in correct scale, but the version that I got includes the 3 main engine bells, the 4 secondary engine bells, the trash chute on the spine of the conning tower, the 2 domes on top of the conning tower, the purpose of which are still uncertain, but most frequent thing you hear is that they're shield generators. In addition, a tiny little Millennium Falcon, which is half the reason I was sold on this kit in the first place, was because of that Millennium Falcon. When I was planning on doing my smaller scale one, I think it was like 4,000th scale or 4,500th, I don't even remember, but it was very, very small. I was going to do a scratch-built in-scale Millennium Falcon to attach to the rear conning tower, and I was just going to do it using like sheet styrene cut to the rough shape. Because at that scale, like, you wouldn't be able to see any detail anyway. I would just do like some detail paint to kind of give the impression of what it was. And I was really excited about that, but yeah, when I saw this was available, I'm like, oh, I'm all over that. And I think I paid like $50 shipped for it, so it wasn't even expensive. But we are going to take a look at that. We're going to take a look at the kit, the Star Destroyer itself, as well as the upgrade kit. So let's take a peek. So this is basically how it arrived to me. Just in the individual poly bags, just a pile of parts. Not really much to speak of. Can't speak of the box art, can't speak of the instructions because I have neither. So let's just dive right into the parts. And what better place to start than with the main hull. This is the upper hull. It comes in two parts. So you got the main structure and then the bow component. Seems to be split on a natural panel line, but the detail is really nice. This has got etched panel lines, unlike the Revell model. Otherwise, it looks very, very similar in terms of detail. Like this little extension here, very similar. All the individual raised sections, all very similar. One thing that this one doesn't have, is that the turrets were individually rotatable. This one, they are not. They are fixed in position. Like, you can mount the individual guns, and presumably you might be able to raise and elevate them, but you can't rotate the turrets, which is kind of a bummer. Structurally, though, it seems to be very sturdy. It's very heavy-duty, high-impact plastic. Lots of detail, actually, along these veins along the back of the main hull look really nice. These would respond really nicely to some dry brushing and some washes. Just a lot of little raised, little greebly panels. You might be able to see some stuff right in there, just like some little panels here and there, and as well as along the edge, the leading edge of the trench. Really, really nice looking. And this little spine here at the front, I actually drilled out on the smaller one a lot of this to add lots of windows, and it was going to look really, really neat once it was done. I think I'm going to try and do the same thing here. Not really sure how the incidentally, all the side panel parts are just blank and flat, so these will be like separate pieces that'll get added on for detail. The bow section, likewise, very nice. Has actually some much higher raised blocks on here, as well as just some additional structural detail. Again, same panel lines are really nice, and just a lot of neat detail along the edge of the trench. Might actually be enough room on this raised square here that with care and attention, might actually be able to drill in some holes to feed in some fiber optic through there. So that's going to be interesting. Incidentally, there's also gaps on the underside here, so might be able to do the same through some of these. Like there's recessed holes on all of these, so it might be possible to actually put lights in some of these raised panels. Hull bottom, again, comes as two separate pieces. You got the bow section and then the main section of the hull. There is a cutout for the reactor dome, I believe it is. There's actually a lot more surface projection on here than there was on the upper hull, which is interesting. I mean, the same, nice recessed panel lines. You got like lots of deep, wide etched grids in kind of geometric patterns, and then kind of Aztecing, almost similar to like a Star Trek ship. For like the finer details. So there's some really nice etched in grid panel lines on here. And again, some of these raised panels, looks like there will be ample room in some of these to put in some lighting. A disappointment on this version is that the hangar is a single piece molded into the bottom hull. This is actually a component that you can buy a replacement for from the same Falcon 3D parts or whomever it was that I got the other kits from. I may still do that because it's got a lot more detail, and it's got like recessed in hangar areas and everything that are just kind of filled in on this part. Obviously you can't unless you were to do it as like the 4 individual walls and then the top plate. You wouldn't be able to have recessed in areas on the deeper, like basically in these little scalloped cuts in the bottom here are supposed to be the hangars, and these are obviously just filled in. But here you got like you got all of the I think this would be the control booth, and you got racks for all kinds of probably TIE fighters that get hung up in there, and then there's lots of detail all over inside the hangar. It would respond really well to some fiber optics and other lighting effects. The smaller hangar in the bow section, this would be probably where shuttles would launch, I think. Again, it's molded into the hull section, and again, that's kind of a disappointment. But again, the detail looks just as good as it does on the other part, but it would be nice if it was a separate piece. Incidentally, these 2 raised parts right here, I'm guessing those might be tractor beam projectors, because they're in the right position. They would be, you know, right lined up with the edge of the hangar. It would be a perfect spot for a tractor beam projector to drag in a capital ship. But I'm not really sure. But it would respond really nicely to some dry brushing. And then the edge of the trench, you know, very similar to the top of the ship. Just looks really, really nice. As far as main structural components for the main, you know, cheese wedge of the hull, this is it. This is the back engine compartment, engine section. So you got lots of mechanical stuff, lots of turbines and mechanisms, and a lot of stuff in here that would respond nicely to a lot of detail work. The slots for where all the engines fit are all keyed, so everything will fit only in one orientation, because presumably there's detailing inside the engine bells that we haven't had a chance to look at yet. But like, just like, look at some of the detail in there. Like, that just looks fantastic. I'm super excited to do some dry brushing in there, and like inside, like these, between these housings of the large, or of the smaller secondary engines, just looks super cool. Now, if you were to light this, you would obviously have to carve out all of these openings, except for obviously the center engine, which is separately opened up. Not really sure why they would have these all closed off, but yeah, looks really, really nice. There's lots of like clamps, and looks like articulated details for vanes, which would be, you know, on the back of the main hull. Like on the actual ship, they would be articulated. Obviously, they're not on the model. Okay, here we got our first runner of parts. We're only going to take a look at one of these because they're identical. We got one of the main engines and 2 of the smaller secondary engines. We got the, I'm just going to call it the shield generator. And then we got most of the guns for one side. And unfortunately, because this didn't have a box and it kind of was shipped, you know, kludged together, a couple of the barrels are a little bit bent. Not too bad. They might be fixable. If not, it would be fairly easy to use some strip styrene or some rod styrene to replace those barrels, which I'm not sure if you can get tube styrene in that scale, but if you can, I might actually just use that instead. Incidentally, the detailing on the engine bells is pretty good. There's kind of a gap around the inner bell and the outer bell, which I would imagine is probably for some kind of cooling. There's probably cooling mechanism between the 2 bells so that the engines don't overheat, but that's just my wacky speculation. The detailing actually on the replacement parts is quite a bit better than this, but for, you know, as styrene goes, this is actually really nice. As far as the other runner, the guns on it, they all seem to have come out in much better shape. There don't appear to be any with bent barrels, so that's nice. Okay, we got some hull superstructure parts. I believe this would be the first layer that goes just above the main hull. Some of these panels, I'm not really sure where they would end up fitting. but I think this fits together like so, and this would be where the conning tower attaches to the main structure. Looks like there's an additional little kind of a house-shaped detail panel that fits in there. I'm not really sure why that would be separate, because I don't think it elevates too much above the surface. Interesting that they would do it that way, but again, you know, same as the rest of the ship. Really nice etched detail. There's a lot of structural stuff molded in here. Looks really, really nice. Yeah, some windows and some light, some fiber optic lighting in there would look really, really great. As well as like these panels, you got a little bit of sidewall edge on here would respond to some fiber optics really nicely. Alright, we got some parts for the conning tower. I believe these are the side structural components. This looks like it would probably lock into that superstructure bit that we just showed off, and then the conning tower itself would slot into this little gap here. Not sure if this is part of it or if this is part of the main superstructure, but we've also got part of the display stand and some additional panels for the superstructure, and some side trenches. We're starting to look at some of the trenches in the side here, which some really neat detail in there. Looks like a lot of this is going to look really nice lit up. There's lots of room for windows and other lighting. Even, yeah, like this is going to look really, really cool as well, like on here as well. I think this is like the sidewall for part of the superstructure. Lots of layers and lots of lines indicating like decks and detail. Same with on this side. Like it just looks really, really cool, and I'm really excited to start working on this. Some more superstructure. This would be, I believe, the forwardmost section of the forward superstructure. You've got the rest of the display stand. This would be, I guess, the forward plate and then the support triangle. I'm not sure if the bottom hull has holes in it for mounting or like locator pins or pegs or anything. It looks like these are just flat. They might like slot into something, some location on the hull. I'm not really sure. But you got some more sidewall stuff here. More here and here and here, and then yeah, like sidewalls all over the place, and some of these details look really, really great. You can see there, it looks like there's a small hangar door right there. This looks like it's the housing for the center engine. It's interesting the way this is molded, because some of these parts have detailing on like this upper side, and then some have them on the other side, like right here and right here. It's just weird that they would do it that way. Usually, like, one side is the top, and that side has all the molded detail, and the other side is the negative, and it's got just the flat bottom. But yeah, this bit of superstructure, again, there's lots of stuff and lots of space in here for fiber optics. It's going to look really, really neat. There's a little hangar door as well. Looks like it has, maybe those are cannons? I'm not really sure what those are above it. But there's two of them, presumably, so one for either side of the hull of the ship. All right, so this is mostly conning tower. You got the bottom, you got the top. I think this is the back, and this is the front. You've got the communications array, I think it is, on the top of it. Some sidewall parts. This would be the rear of the spine. This is where you would have to cut out this gap in order to install the trash compactor, which I may or may not do, because that's a very specific moment in the movie. I want this to be the Avenger as featured, you know, toward the middle of the Empire Strikes Back, when the Falcon was attached to the back of it. I don't necessarily want it to be that exact moment when the Falcon escapes. But yeah, here you've got the front. And I'm guessing this little blister right here is the bridge, because it's a very slightly rounded projection. Looks like it'd be about the right size and the right shape to be the bridge. So that'll have a lot of windows cut into it. I mean, this whole, pretty much every flat surface, front, back, sides, is going to have, you know, holes drilled into it for lighting, for fiber optics, but obviously the bridge is kind of a focal point. So that's going to be a fairly major point to work on. But yeah, all of this looks really great, and I'm really excited. The top of the conning tower actually has some interesting designs for locating how the domes attach. Like if you look in there, like they're geared. It's not just keyed. Like there's notches around the perimeter that are laid out in a very specific way, and then like the whole thing inside is geared to accept it. So yeah, it's very interesting the way they laid that out. And last up, we've got some more sidewall parts. More sidewall parts. We've got the Reactor Dome, which, interesting, it's not quite spherical, it's a little bit squished. Like it looks like if you took like a round flat rubber disc and kind of pinched it a little bit. Like it looks pinched in this direction, which it may well have been when they did the actual prop, but there's some really nice panel lining on it and some additional surface detail. This is that little house-shaped projection on the top of the superstructure I mentioned earlier. So not really sure why it would be a separate part, but hey, it is. Maybe they wanted to leave it open so people could access, like, obviously, I mean, I'm sure they intended or expected people were going to light this thing, so maybe they left it as a, you know, a part that could be easily popped off so people could access like a switch inside or something. Beats me. But yeah, some more sidewall stuff. I think this is part of the superstructure, and it looks really fantastic. And some last bits of sidewall parts for more of the lower superstructure. Again, lots and lots of really nice detail on here. Very, very evocative of the actual shooting props. And finally, you got the last of the engine bells. Oh, incidentally, I believe this is a structural support. I think I saw one elsewhere in the model and I failed to call it out. But this is a structural support, I believe, for inside the main part of the hull. Possibly for the conning tower, but I think this is way too big for the conning tower. In fact, yes, I'm going to call it. This is way too big for the conning tower. So this would be probably for somewhere inside the main hull. So yeah, that's it for the kit parts. Let's take a look at the upgrade kit. First up, we got the engine bells here. These are 3D printed. I'm not really sure what the material they used is, but it's very soft. You might be able to notice I can kind of pinch it a little bit. But the detail is really, really nice. The outer ring is actually the structure of the entire thing. So instead of, like, on the other part, how it had just kind of a little gap here and then the inner part was closed off, making it look like there were two concentric engine bells. This one here, like this ring, is a separate part. You can actually see around that ring, you can see straight down into the engine bells. So this ring is just kind of a separate smaller bit with ribbing attached to the ribbing inside of the engine bell. And it's really quite neat. So yeah, if you had some lighting in here and it came through correctly, you might be able to see a bit of lighting in the gap between the ring and the actual bell itself. Incidentally, whatever this material is very slightly translucent, so you can kind of maybe make out the shadow of my finger. If I can get there. Yeah, you might be able to kind of see the shadow of my finger behind it. But yeah, there's 3 of them, and one of them came detached from the support material, but it does appear to have all the same keying all around it as the main engine bells of the kit. In addition, there's 4 little tiny holes. I'm not really sure if those are intended for lighting to come through, but you can see them on the bottom there, and you can see straight through them inside. So I'm not sure if those were intended to have lighting come through or if they'll just be closed off. In fact, I can go ahead and just do this little test fit. There we go. It's keyed in. Fits in real nice. It's a bit of a looseness there, but I'm sure the actual model parts are just the same. And very nice and deep opening in the back. Like it goes quite a ways back into the part. So like into the hull part. You know, if you weren't going to light this, if you just painted this black, it would just look like it went on for miles. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, like the detail on the parts, like there's not, like the fidelity of these is really fantastic. I was worried about that when I decided to order them, because I've looked at some of the 3D printing my girlfriend has done at school, and like you can see the lines between the layers, and like these are super fine. I don't know how well you can even make that out, but like you can't even hardly see any detail lines between layers, which is fantastic. So I'm really excited. Like whatever extruder they used has like super fine detail. Yeah, it's capable of super fine detail, and I'm really impressed. So that's the engine bells. Speaking of engines, these are the 4 smaller secondary engines. I've seen them referred to as Hyperdrive engines, and they're all printed as one single print, all connected to the single base. They all appeared to be the same exact identical, I won't say mold, but same CAD file, just rotated, you know, 180 degrees each. So these two are identical to each other. And these two are identical to each other, and they're rotated 180 degrees, and just the CAD model just connected them when it printed. And they're, you know, each pointed off in opposite directions. But the support material is actually really neat the way it works. I remember I watched an unboxing video of the other kit, and the support material for the hangar, it was amazing the way it was laid out. Like it looked like a cathedral. It just looks super cool. And I'm really excited about these. Like, I don't work with 3D printing, like, ever, so this is just neat to see. But the detail inside the engines is what just kills it. Like, that detailing is fantastic. Far better than the kit part, where did those go? There they are. Yeah, if you'll compare that to the kit-provided parts, you can see there's, like, some ribbing around the center cone. But in here, like there's far more ribbing, and there's additional detail in there that's just not in the kit provided parts. So these were definitely a significant upgrade over the kit parts. The main engine bells were an upgrade, but they were not that vast of an upgrade in terms of detail. These were a marked improvement. Next up we have the bridge domes, the deflector dishes, or whatever the hell they are. And once again, these are a pretty significant upgrade over the kit parts. You will have to shave off some detail on the bridge itself in order to get these to attach, because they have part of the base on them. So I'm not sure how much of this you're going to have to cut off, but you will have to cut some of it off. But they've got the little veins all around the top, and just the detail itself on the domes. Instead of just being a simple like geodesic dome, they've got like raised little dots here and there, and then the top center is a little more detailed. There's like recessed panels and raised panels. Unfortunately, in my case, a couple of these little veins on one of the domes have broken off. So that's kind of a disappointment. I will have to repair those, probably using rod styrene. I might be able to, you know, carefully drill out and replace them. But that's kind of a huge bummer. You know, it's very fine, it's very flexible, but you know, something will only flex so much before it breaks. But again, these are a remarkable upgrade over the kit parts, which you know, they're very flat, very smooth. You know, there's not a lot to them. Those the veins are very fine and very small, and not they don't stick up nearly as far as they should. The bottom parts, looks okay. You know, they've got the support structure, and they're, you know, nicely done, but there's only so much you can do with styrene with injection molding. Whereas with this 3D printing, you might be able to see between like all of these conduits and rods or whatever. Like there's a lot more detail in there, because you can do that with 3D printing that you can't with injection molding. So these are, again, a very, very significant upgrade over the kit parts. Finally, we're starting to get into the original stuff for this kit that was not included with the model. This is the trash compactor chute. Now, where did the spine go for this thing? There we go. It's not a drop-in part. Like you can't just swap it in, but it replaces this part right here. So you would have to cut this rectangle out and be very precise about it. And precision is not my strong suit. And actually the detail on this, I don't even know how well it would match. And I can't tell if it goes into this gap or if it goes into this gap. I'm going to have to do some research. But looks, hard to tell. Hard to tell, really. But the part itself looks really nice. Like there's multiple layers of detail, like around the edge. There's some gaps around the edges. So it's neat. I don't know if I'm going to use it, but we'll see. And last but not least, the showstopper, the one you've all been waiting for. This would be the Millennium Falcon. And at this scale, it's very, very small. It's about 1 centimeter long, about 7.5 millimeters across. This is very tiny, but the detail is pretty good for the size, considering the size. Like you can make out all the relevant areas. Like you got the cockpit here, you got the dish, like the 6 vents. The grills on the back you can kind of make out, and like the cross section with the docking ports on either side, like the mandibles, like everything's all there. It's just, it's not super detailed, but it's detailed enough. Like in the right light, you can make out the quad turrets. And now I have no idea what it looks like on the underside because it's still attached to the support material. And I'm not going to detach it because I don't want to lose anything. But it's irrelevant what it looks like on the bottom side anyway, because it's going to be attached to the back of the conning tower. But the fact that, you know, I can make out the quad laser turret. In fact, I'm going to bust out my flashlight here and maybe see if we can get a little better look at it on camera. Maybe you can kind of see that a little more clearly. Like you can make out now, yeah, you can kind of see the little vents on the back and the cannon maybe a little bit better. But yeah, this is really small. Like legit, you guys, this thing is tiny. Yeah. Really, really small. So that is the Zvezda 1/2700th scale Star Destroyer and Falcon 3D parts, 3D Falcon parts. I hate myself for not knowing off the top of my head. Their upgrade kit. So I did a model years ago of the Revell Venator class Star Destroyer from Revenge of the Sith. That was my first time using fiber optics. And that kit is 22/56th scale, which very specific. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I don't know what it is. But that was a really fun project to work on, and I still feel like it's one of my best. This being a very similar scale, you know, 2700 versus, you know, 22/56th, it'll be noticeable that it's a little bit too small, but I don't think if they're not sitting right next to each other on a shelf, I don't think anybody's going to be too critical about it. So I think they'll look okay sitting near each other. Yeah, this will still be much larger. I think this comes in at close to 2 feet. 2700 scale, like they're 1600 meters long, a Star Destroyer is. And at 2700th scale, that would be about 70 centimeters, 60, 70 centimeters, roughly. So that's still pretty big. That's about 2 feet, maybe a little between, like, you know, just a little more and a little less than 2 feet. So that's pretty considerable. I mean, well, let's just grab a couple of hull parts here and take a look. Like, that is not inconsiderable. Like, my Venator class Star Destroyer is probably about as long as just this hull part. So this is pretty considerably longer. So I would say, yeah, probably 20-ish, 22 inches. Best guess. Where's my measuring tape? There it is. I should have done this long ago. I should have been way more prepared for this. But I'm not, because I'm a schmuck. This is 23 inches from bow to stern. That is a big model. Yeah, my Venator class is probably 14 inches, so this is going to be quite a big chunk difference, which is fine. I think the two of them side by side, I don't know if it's going to be all that noticeable that they're different scales, because they're not vastly different scales. They're fairly close. So I'm excited. This is going to be another one of those I'm not going to get to this for a long time kind of a thing, because, you know, I want this to turn out really nicely. Like, not just, you know, a dozen LEDs inside the body and, you know, static engine lights. I want to Arduino the hell out of this thing. Like, I want to do a base like I did with my Venator class, like the wood block in the shape of a Star Destroyer with clear support rods, similar to what I did with my Enterprise last year for the restoration. And so I want everything to be, like, outstanding. I want this to be top-notch. You know, I'm really excited about this thing. Like I said, I want to Arduino the hell out of this thing. I might put one inside it if I can fit it. Or I might put it in the base. I'm not really sure. I've got to do a lot of strategizing on this build. In the meantime, though, I need to actually figure out how to program an Arduino. I got started learning last year. I learned how to do some very basic stuff, like single circuit stuff. Like, I could do the engine effects, or I could do the window effects, or I could do strobing lights on the conning tower. I could do one of those things, but not all of them. I got that much figured out. I know there's ways to make it do all of them together, and I need to figure out how to do that. So I got to do some research. I have a book. My girlfriend also has a book, How to Program Arduinos. She's way more advanced than I am. She could do this in her sleep. Like, she could probably program this entire thing for me, but I want to learn how to do it myself so that I can adapt it for other purposes. Like, if I wanted to put an Arduino in a Star Trek model. Like, if I wanted to... like, if the forever long hoped for 1,000th scale, you know, Enterprise D, if they ever do one, then I would want to have an Arduino in that, so you could have, like, photon torpedo lighting effects, or, you know, light up the warp nacelle so it looks like they flash, so it looks like it's going to warp. You know, put a speaker somewhere in it so it has, like, the sound effect of going to warp. But my point is that this is going to be a complicated build. This isn't just going to be a straight build with simple lighting. This is going to be an advanced project, and it's beyond me at the moment. But I feel like it's something I'm going to be able to handle, and I'm very excited for that. And since I've got so much time, so much spare time, you know, when I'm up north, I mean, I can always bring a simple array of, you know, our LEDs and wires and a breadboard and learn how to do this while I'm there. In fact, I was going to do that anyway because I've got a Gundam lighting project I want to work on over the next few weeks too. So, that said, this is a hell of a kit. This is a hell of a kit. Zvezda, they really went to town on this thing. I'm really impressed. I'm actually really glad that I abandoned the Revell kit, because that thing was a toy, man. You know, it had the flip-out feet for, like, an integrated display stand. It looked terrible. It was too small. Like, that thing was smaller than my Venator class, so they would have looked awful together. These two like this thing and my Venator will probably look fantastic, and I'm very excited to get it going. Anyway, I'm going to end it here before I keep talking for another hour. So thank you everyone out there for watching, and happy modeling.